Hello. Good afternoon, guys. Atlas here again. Today's tutorial will be about how to make a Vocaloid or any other voice synth song cover. I've seen tutorials on YouTube for other aspects of song covers, like how to use the software or how to tune your cover, but never actually on setting everything up to do these things. So I've laid out my own process step by step on how to create a song cover from scratch. Any website or resource you see me use in this video, I will be leaving in the description below. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is obviously know what song you want to cover. Once you have a title for the song that you're covering, we can move on to finding out three things. Number one, the key of the song, which will be useful when we're making harmonies and stuff later. Number two, the song's BPM, which is very important for the entire process. And number three, if the song has an available instrumental. To find the key and BPM of your song, if your song is mainstream and popular enough, you can just Google it and it'll come up. But if it's not mainstream and popular, or if it's just like a Vocaloid synth-oriented song, you can make use of one or both of the websites below: Audio Keychain and TuneBat. You'll need an MP3 of the song that you're trying to cover for this, so you can use any YouTube URL converter or whatever to download it. Once you have the MP3 file, go to either of the websites that I listed, and then you're going to add the MP3 file, and then when you see where it says upload, click upload for it. Wait for the website to analyze the MP3 file, and it'll show you two things, being the key and BPM for that song. It's not always perfect, and sometimes it doesn't always show the same BPM, which is why I say to use one, both, or even more to compare and contrast what the common BPM for those that comes up, and make sure that you have the right BPM before going further. Having the right BPM is critical for making a cover, unless you are doing a remix, but we are not doing that in this tutorial. Once you have your key and BPM, now it is time to find the instrumental. You can Google search it and it'll usually come up. If it's a Vocaloid or Sim song, sometimes you have to find it on the song creator's original upload. However, there are some songs, goodbye chainsaw, where the original does not have an instrumental available. In this case, most people either give up or try using Audacity's vocal remover function to make one. This is a valid option, but I present to you a better option: edityouraudio.com. None of these are sponsored, by the way. Anyway, on edityouraudio.com, you can upload the MP3 or WAV file of whatever file, or copy and paste in a YouTube link, and this website will do two things. One, it will make an acapella of the vocals by itself, and two, it will have an instrumental separate from that. You can download both of these once the site converts it. Without an account on this site, I believe you're limited to doing this once per 24 hours, and with a non-premium account, it's either 2 or 3, but don't quote me. This, however, in my opinion, is the best way to get an instrumental of a song without an official instrumental upload. Okay, now that we have the BPM, the key, and the instrumental, well, what do we do now? We put it all together. For this example, I will be opening up FL Studio and we will be making a MIDI. This is now the more tedious part of the tutorial, so just bear with me, okay? Depending on how complex your song is vocally, this might take you a while, or it might not take you that long at all. If you are a musician or you play an instrument already, this part will be much more easier for you in regards to recognizing notes. Okay, so when you open up FL Studio, the first thing you want to do is change the BPM at the top middle to the BPM of your song. Then create an empty track somewhere and keep it there for a second. After that, import the original song, not the instrumental, to the program's timeline. Go back to your empty track now and drag the length of it to the full length of the song. This is just for the vocals of your song, so if your song ends before the vocal length does or whatever, you can shorten this track to the vocal length ending, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm leaving it as is. Next, you want to go up to View at the top and click on channel rack to bring up your channel rack. This is basically where we'll be dragging our piano VST, which is what we're going to be using to make the vocal notes for our MIDI. Now on the browser, on the top left, click on the icon that looks like an audio spectrum. Afterwards, click on Packs and then go down to Instruments, and after that, click on Keyboard. I personally like to use Stage Grand Piano, but you can honestly choose whatever works best for you or whatever you like the most. After you choose which one you like, click and drag the piano VST to the channel rack. After it loads, you can simply X out of the little box that it opens up, or you can play around with the keys below to see how it sounds. Now, I'm not sure if FL Studio does this or just mine, but when making the MIDI, I put one random note at the very end of my empty pattern. When I'm done MIDIing, I delete this note. And why do I do this? It basically allows me to start and stop anywhere on this big pattern. Otherwise, it will only let me go to a point on my pattern where I have notes placed, which can make things frustrating and difficult down the line. So let's do that real quick. So let's make sure the channel rack is open. On your piano VST, right click and click on piano roll to open up the piano roll. And boom, this looks a lot like Vocaloid or Utao or other synths, right? So for this song's example, it ends around 185 on the timeline. So we're going to scroll all the way to 185 and put one random note there. To do this, you can make a note on the timeline and drag it, or you can do the method that I found out earlier today, which is to scroll to the top of the timeline, click the control key, and then with your mouse, left click on the very end, and it'll drag you pretty far to like the end of that part of the timeline. And then from there, you can just drag that note the rest of the way to the end, you know, that little 185 part, or however long the end of your song is. Okay, so on to the final steps for this part. Make the original song loud enough to hear the voice, but not overpowering the piano, because you want to be able to hear the piano over the vocals. You can adjust the sound level by going to the channel rack, and on the songs part, use the right knob, not the left one, because the left one controls if it goes through the left or right channel, but the right knob, and you can make it go quieter or louder. It's basically volume control. Once you have good enough levels, you simply make the MIDI by ear. Worry not though, it sounds a lot harder than it actually is, which is why I recommend you having a note detector or analyzer app on your phone. I will leave the names of two of them that I use myself in the description below. This helps you where if you hear a note but you don't exactly know what that note is, you can just hum it, the same note, and the note detector will show you what note it is, and you can just put that note in your timeline. Then you make your MIDI, and then make sure you save often as well. To make things even easier for yourself, turn on Snap on the MIDI timeline, which is the magnet icon. This helps you stay in a fixed pattern when creating notes. Click on the right facing arrow on the top left part of the screen. Scroll down to Snap. You can see the different ways that you can snap to the project. I usually choose main or 1/4 for my own. Please note that when you create a note, however big it is how big the next note will be. So if your note is 4 squares big, that's how big the next note will be. This is just a note in case you have long held notes in your song that you're covering. You can mitigate this by simply left clicking on a previous smaller note, and then the next note you make will be the exact same size. So this goes for any future notes that you create. Right clicking on that will delete that note, so be careful. Also, if you deleted something or you messed up and you were like, I only use my one Control Z, what do I do now? What you can do from there is hold Control Alt Z, and this lets you undo whatever you want. Okay, so once you've done all the vocal MIDI stuff, and this is strictly for main vocals only, we're not doing any harmonies or ad-libs on the same MIDI track. You make a separate MIDI track for anything that isn't the main vocals. but for the purposes of this, we're not going to do that. And also, it is way easier for you to do all that after you finish this and you go into Vocaloid or Synth. You can just add those tracks yourself. Anyway, making it less complicated for ourselves. Once you're done with that, we're going to export this project once you've completely finished it as a MIDI. To do this, I would highly recommend, save a copy of your MIDI project file just in case anything happens, because once we do this, I do not believe you can hear the piano part of this anymore. Then you go to the top of your DAW, click on Tools, then we're going to go to Macros, then Prepare for MIDI Export. A box will pop up basically asking you, do you want to do this? Because you can't undo after this process. Hit yes only if you have saved a copy of your project. If not, hit no and save a copy. Once you do this, you can go up to File, Export, and then MIDI file. To my knowledge, you cannot export a MIDI file unless you do the step above. Alright, so after you've done that, congratulations with your MIDI file. You can then import that MIDI file to Vocaloid, Utao, or SMV. You can add the lyrics from there, you can tune it how you want, and yada yada yada. You can add your ad-libs, you can add a different track for harmonies and all that good stuff. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, as it helps you create your own song covers. If you ever wonder how VSQ, UST, or SVP makers do their files, this is basically more or less the same process. If you did find this helpful, please like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below and I'll try to answer to the right direction if I can. Anyway, thank you all, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.